Welcome to The Ambitious Introvert, the leading growth and development podcast for the estimated 56% of us who recharge by going inwards. Our purpose is to help you manage your social battery and own your energy so you can reach your true potential in your business, your career, or your life. I'm your host, Emma-Louise Parks, a former air traffic controller, entrepreneur, and a success coach with over 15 years experience. I've supported hundreds of introverts like you who dream big and are ready to take action towards making those dreams a reality without compromising their energy in the process. Each week, my guests and I will be sharing tips, tricks, and hacks on how to build your resilience, master your mindset, and cultivate self-leadership. Skills that will help you reach your goals without trying to be someone that you're not. We'll also be sharing valuable lessons and insights from our own personal experiences, all focused on one thing, helping you own your energy to reach your potential. Hello, welcome back. Thank you for tuning in to this guest episode. I was thrilled to have this conversation with Melissa Unsell-Smith for many reasons, but one is that one of the first things that she brings up is her Solitude retreats. Now, anyone that's been listening in or reading my newsletter for even maybe 6 months now will know that this is something that I work really hard to cultivate on a regular basis. The last one that I did was back in September, where I took myself off to a hotel, put my phone on flight mode, didn't talk to anyone for 3 days, and just really spent that time going inwards and being in my own energy. And I love that Melissa shares that this is actually something that created one of the biggest breakthroughs in her career, and for her to be able to reconnect with and re-identify her innate strengths that she had lost track of. Melissa and I have very different backgrounds, but actually a very similar trajectory in that we both came from very male-dominated fields and both found our way again in our late 30s. And it was so great to talk to her, not just because we have so much in common, which we really do, as you'll hear in the episode, but also we have very, very similar routines. Now, routines are obviously such a personal thing that we need to experiment with. You know, trial and error has got me where I am with my daily routines, my weekly routines, the way I work. And it was so interesting as Melissa was sharing hers, how similar mine and hers were. So as I say, while it's personal for everyone, I think there's definitely some maybe inspiration that can be taken because there's 2 votes here. These routines definitely work for at least 2 of us with Melissa and I. So again, I loved having this conversation. I think it will be very permission giving for a lot of people. And it's definitely inspired me to already be thinking about my next Solitude retreat where I can take some time alone. So thanks again for tuning in and please enjoy the episode. Melissa, it's so lovely to see you again twice in a month. I think this is that we've been on Zoom. Yes.
Yeah, lovely to see you.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I have been really looking forward to our conversation simply because, well, first of all, as we discovered when we first met, we have so much in common, like introverts, ambitious, red hair, same age,
Yes.
all of the
things.
You're just like my twin in Texas.
I love it. I love it.
So I've been really looking forward to this, and especially with your career and business background, which I think so often people go, oh, introvert, yeah. And then you see these things that people have accomplished and they don't necessarily see that side of us. I get that a lot. People will say, oh, but you seem really confident or you've done all of these things. I'm like, still an introvert. So tell us a little bit about how did you first become a founder? Let's start with your first business. What was the story leading up to that?
Well, I would love to start with that, Emma-Louise, and thank you for having me. And yes, it's so great to be here and have this conversation. My entrepreneurial journey happened unexpectedly. I was at university and I was studying to be a radiologist. That was what I thought my path would be. And I did not have the fortunate opportunity to have all of my college paid for. So I worked part-time during my time at university, and doing that work actually led to entrepreneurism. I worked in a corporate legal department of all things, doing a lot of paper shuffling and formulating automation techniques and workflow methodologies for files that were just involved in litigation. And when I was ready to graduate and leave that company, it was me and I had trained a few other people. They literally said, wow, we didn't realize how much you are now our intellectual property. And if we lose you, it will be a disaster to this department. So we want to hire you. We want to give you capital to start a business and create software around these processes you've created in the physical record form. And so that is how my first foray into entrepreneurship began. It began based on something that I was really talented at, automation and efficiencies. And I got to build an amazing software platform in the early 2000s before software was really prevalent in our society, which was very exciting.
I love that you said it happened because of something that you were very talented at. When you went in, because playing to our strengths is so important, obviously for our well-being and happiness, but also for our energy as introverts. When you took that job just to pay your way through college, did you think, oh, I'm really good at this, I'm going to love it? Or was it just like, oh, here's a job, it's going to pay me something?
It was just a job that was going to pay me something. And then discovering that actually provided so much value to that company, enough to give us startup capital to build a business around it. And leaning into that, it really was kind of looking back. And that was early 2000s, right? And we had that company for 14 years. I did that for so long. It was a journey of wild successes and failures along the way. And looking back, I realized I really wasn't passionate about the work we were doing, but I was good at it. So in that point in my life, I was leaning into a talent. I was getting experience around that. But as those later years started coming, I actually felt a bit disconnected from myself and my true desires and passion. And that started like trickling to the surface more profoundly kind of in those later years.
That is such a common thing. It happened to me in air traffic control. It's happened to many of my clients where they're operating in a zone of excellence, something that they can do really well, really competently, almost on autopilot to a degree because it's a strength, but they're not feeling fulfilled by it. They're not feeling like something's missing is what a lot of clients will say when they're in a job and they're like, I can do it and it pays well and I should be really grateful, but I just feel like it's not fulfilling me in the way that it should, or it's not playing up to my strengths.
And I really, now that I am much more in a forward path from that time in my life, it's amazing how many people, and women in particular, that I've interacted with that have had the same notion and feeling. And I think just as human beings and as women, we grow, we flourish, and we're allowed to have our passions and desires morph and change over time. But I think that we all want to lean into more meaning and purpose and passion. And when we feel that disconnection from what we really want and desire, we kind of crave a desire for more. And we need a way to explore what that desire for more is and kind of lean into that worth that we desire. And I think that has been the journey that I have personally been on over the past few years.
So you said 14 years at your original company. As you got towards the end and you started to explore, as you say, like, this isn't really meeting my needs anymore. What was the chain of events that led you to exit or sell or however you ended that? Because that must have been a huge decision.
Yeah. So after that 14 years, we had an opportunity to exit the company. We did that. And the group of co-founders that I had at that company, we actually decided to start another software company together in the data privacy space. And that has been a really illuminating process as well. That company is quite young and 5 years old, but we all had this knowledge, this intellect that we wanted to give to the world. But for me, it's been a journey of, okay, wait a minute. I'm not sure that I'm aligned with this anymore. And my word for last year, 2023, was alignment, and kind of learning that I don't feel like I'm truly aligned and I have other passions and talents I want to give to the world. I'm going to start leaning away from my tech career and leaning into my true passions and talents now. And so, was it one particular event? Was it one particular happening that made this happen? No. And I will explain to you, I think it was 2018. 2018 is when I really began to invest in myself and allow myself to go on what I call my solitude retreats. So I would rent a cabin in the hills and literally have a moment of solitude, no technology, no digital interactions, no human interactions, and just force myself to reflect, be introspective, to journal, and to think. And I think as introverts, it's very easy for many of us to do as introverts. So I found it very helpful. And I kept doing it every single year. And eventually I did it twice a year, every year. And that, I think, is really what I look back on and see as my catalyst for giving myself permission to lean into my new passions and desires.
It's quite easy for us to get influenced by external opinions, other people's energy, and that solitude, like you say, that's so important for, I'm not say finding ourselves, because that sounds a little bit trite, but you know what I mean, Dad. Like actually going inwards, like you say, and not reading something on social media or not reading a blog post to try and work it out, but actually just sitting with ourselves and working it out. I know something that, it's helped me so much over the years, but something I found frustrating at first is, oh, well, I went away for 2 days on my own and I didn't figure it out yet.
Yeah.
Like you've got this idea that it's going to happen instantly. And it reminds me of Bill Gates and his Think Weeks.
Yes.
Which if anyone's read anything about Bill Gates, one of the things that he attributes his success, which I think we'll agree is considerable too, is taking Think Weeks at least a couple of times a year where he does just read books, journal, walk, spend time on his own. And he said that's where all of his innovative ideas and creativity for the company came from.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great, aspirational way to do it. I mean, listen, we live in a world designed to focus on fear and lack and not abundance and gratitude. We also live in a world that is full of noise and distractions. And that really does keep, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, it keeps us, for lack of a better word, unconscious, right? We're just kind of robots or human beings going throughout the day, actually human doings going throughout our day rather than being a human being. So I think what I really, really appreciate investing the time to have those solitude retreats is that it's not easy, by the way. Like every time I pull up to the place I'm staying, I have a high level of apprehension because I'm thinking, wow, I have to stay here for this number of days by myself with no interaction and no communication with anyone. That is not easily come to us in our human nature, right? Because we're used to being distracted and having interactions and routines during our day. But what happens at the end of that is that you really start to open your aperture of awareness. And then you realize you're able to really receive these downloads, hunches, intuition, whatever you want to call it. And it's a really powerful thing. It really kind of embraces this intuitive being that we often dismiss just leading our daily lives.
The last time I went away on my own and fully switched off was September last year. And I went to London, but which probably isn't like the quietest place to switch off. But I went on my own. My phone was on flight mode and it was all good. And I needed to figure some stuff out for the business. And just the intention, I think, of going, because I went for 3 days, expecting that the first day or so, like you say, I'd be settling in and relaxing. I got to the hotel, I checked in, I got changed. I had a walk around, and then I was like, oh, I'm gonna go and get Indian food. And I went and sat on my own and got Indian food, and I had a beer, and I had noise cancelling headphones on because it's London and it's loud. And I had a notebook, and I was just writing words and just letting my brain play. And instantly, the thing that had been troubling me for months in my business, the answer dropped in. I was like, are you kidding me? I've only been here for like 3 hours.
I love it. Oh, that makes me so happy.
And I still did more on the other days, but it's really interesting, just the intention and just the space and just the getting away, like you say, from the noise and from the external influences. And that was almost instantaneous for me. And it's not easy. Like you said, I love being on my own. I love solitude, but it's still not easy because it takes an amount of planning, and it takes an amount of, what's the word I'm looking for? It does take some discipline, I'm going to say, to totally switch off.
It does. And I think what can be a bit apprehensive about the experience is you don't know what's going to drop in for you. And it could be something good. It could be something bad. It could be something that makes you feel uncomfortable. It could be an idea or a revelation that you feel really aligned to lean into, but don't know how to step into that. So then you have to have more solitude to figure out how to step into that. But I think that as introverts, as entrepreneurs or executive leaders, the more aligned we become with our true selves, our desires and worth, I have seen is the more capable we are of showing up as amazing individuals for every interaction we have in our life. Whether you are leading a team and you're an entrepreneur, whether you're leading a team and you're an executive, you are able to serve in a higher capacity. And what happens in that moment of time is you actually start creating a signal for yourself, which I love. And I have felt this in moments in my journey of self-worth and coming into my own, is people are just connected to me. Even you and I, Emma-Louise, I know we're in one of the same entrepreneurial communities, but even there was some synchronicity in us meeting and having so much alignment and interaction. And when that happens, it's just a really compelling way to live and lean into life, which I think, I definitely wish for any introvert out there.
That does require some trust. And I think when we say that to some people, they're like, what? So I'm just going to spend some time on my own and then like amazing things are going to drop in. It's like, well, yeah, actually, it may take a bit of practice, but yeah, totally. I think when we are honoring ourselves and our energy and that alignment piece, I love that. That was your word of the year, by the way. Great word. It does. And the right people and the right opportunities. And the thing for me that I've found, I don't know if it's been the same for you, it's mutually beneficial opportunities then that drop in where it's like, oh, like both people are getting something from this interaction or from this relationship.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that's where the magic really begins to unfold. And it's just a really powerful force. I think as introverts, we are designed to be introspective, which is great. And that can be a very powerful way to serve the world in an outward capacity, which I think is amazing. Also, I feel like as introverts, we also have this superpower to really connect at an exceptional level with other human beings. That's a little bit different from the extroverted peers in our world. But I think we have an opportunity to design that. And I don't know about you, but I know for myself, as I get older with age, as I look at my community of people that I get to interact with, I want to be very mindful of creating boundaries and inputs of what I'm downloading in a day, what I'm interacting with from a media standpoint, or even from the people and the interactions I have. I have really been super powerful in creating those boundaries and honoring them for myself. What I've seen on the flip side of that is that I have really intentional days. And it feels amazing to have an intentional day where I get to have amazing conversations with my community. And those conversations, they're not like light networking fluff, right? Usually when we're networking or doing something, it's a bit transactional in nature. No, I get to have transformational conversations with people. And I think that sometimes introverts get overshadowed by the extroverts, and that we can really create intentional, meaningful interactions with others. And we can use that to become an ecosystem merger. I think that's something that I've been able to do, kind of building my new business, is just gathering other amazing female introverts and having these conversations and becoming a powerful force and creating this ripple in the world that has a high vibrational frequency of just amazing goodness. And I think that's really powerful as well.
And I'm going to put a pin in that because I definitely want to come back to what you discovered your strengths were and how you have used them for this new business. But I just want to rewind to something you said when you're talking about the solitude. That's great. What else do you do on a day-to-day basis? Because obviously if you're taking that once or twice a year, that is fantastic. But I know you're very intentional the way I am, and you've got strong boundaries around what you consume. But on a day-to-day basis, what are some of the things that you do so that you're like, all right, I'm taking responsibility for my energy here?
Yes. Oh, I love it. Well, it starts in the morning. It starts when I wake up in the morning. I definitely honor my 90-minute routine. I have a little fur baby, a little Shih Tzu named Ravello. And so I get up, I make myself a cup of coffee, and I take my dog for a 20 or so minute walk in the neighborhood that we live in. And during that walk, I'm just kind of setting my stage for the day, my internal talk, if you will, and saying hi to neighbors and just walking and enjoying the weather. I love being outdoors, by the way. So that's like my time to connect with nature. And then after that, I come back in and I read through every single day my intentions and goals that I set for myself every year. And then I meditate. And typically during my meditation, I invest about 30 minutes in that. And I do a lot of visualization exercises when I meditate. After I've done all that, it's been about 90 minutes. So then that's when I actually turn on my phone, look at my email. If I want to read the news, I will. I will admit I am not a huge consumer of news. It distracts me. It lowers my level of energy and my vibrational frequency. So if I really need to know about something, I find that other people tell me what's going on in the world. And that's one of the things that really sets my tone for the day and allows me to interact with others with so much energy and grace and poise and magnetism, because I've invested in myself first. And then when it comes to my work, I've designed it to where I really only do meetings on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. That way, Mondays, I have the choice and freedom to be creative, to actually create content, work on something that has to do with strategy around the business. And on Fridays, I usually do more administrative tasks, doing administrative work in my business that needs to be done, and really not working past the afternoon and just having that afternoon off and being able to go into the weekend. And that just has been a really, really good cadence for what I need in my life right now.
I love this so much. We have our weeks up almost identically.
Love it.
If I don't do creative things on a Monday, I'll have no creative juice left. And then admin is for Friday because it's generally just, quite dull and repetitive. And then calls in the middle of the week.
Exactly. It worked out so well. Yes.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And it can feel, I've talked about this a lot on the podcast. There can be a lot of pressure to do a morning routine, but a lot of the morning routines that we see pushed are a little bit more masculine. It's like, get up and do an hour of cardio and then your weights and, get up at 5 a.m. to do it and all of this. And it can feel pretty exhausting just to read it, let alone do it. I love that you're like, when you said 90-minute routine, I was like, whoa. But then it's actually very spacious. And the things that you're doing in it are very gentle and nourishing rather than kind of exhausting yourself at the start of the day.
Absolutely. And I think it is. It's gentle. It's quiet. There's some solitude in there. I realize not everyone can design their day like that, but it's like, what can you do for yourself during the day? And, I don't have children, so I don't have anyone to get off to school or any activities. So I have that space in my morning that I can do that. For those that don't, you can create that space at any time in the day. Maybe it's during your lunch break. Maybe it's in the evening. I think just that having the capacity to think about what you do and honor for yourself in each day is a really powerful tool.
And do you have an evening routine as well?
I do. So I love to work out. I mean, working out, it releases endorphins. It makes me feel good. It keeps me fit and energetic. And I love to work out in the evenings. So that's exactly what I do. I work out in the evenings. I love to row. I also love to dance. So I take tap class as well. And it's just really creative and energizing and amazing. And then on the weekends, I love to be in nature and hike. But yeah, I love to have my kind of evening routines. That does not happen every day of the week, but 3 days out of the week, I'm doing something fun in the evening to work out my body and move and kind of move that energy that I've downloaded throughout the day, throughout my body.
I love that. Do you know your human design type?
Yes, I'm a generator.
I thought you would be. I was like, that exercise in the evening is literally like you're expelling all that sacral energy so that you can sleep well. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And generators are very lucky in that, we recharge every single day. So we wake up with that newfound energy. And I think just embracing that with my small, slow, steady morning routine. And then I have conversations like these and interacting with my community. Then I work out, expel the energy, and then repeat the next day. So yeah, I think knowing your human design can be a really great source of knowing how to manage your energy.
Yeah, a lot of my clients lean into it a lot. They've really found that once they know it and start to apply even just small principles of it, it makes the biggest difference to their energy. I'm a generator too. So that's why when you were talking, I was like, we've got the same routine here.
Don't realize around what we need. I love it. I think I was also thinking about this the other day, because just kind of reflecting and having that open aperture of awareness and being able to reflect on any moment in your life, I think is so important. But I've recently done, over the few years, we've all done personality tests and whatnot. But I did one of the 16 personality tests and discovered that I was an INTJ. And then in the result profile, they're like, congratulations, only 2% of the world is an INTJ. I'm like, okay, great. And I'm a redhead, which is also just 2% of the world. And I just started really using that information to think about, wow, even as a young child, I felt I don't want to use the word powerful, but because I don't have another word to describe it, I'm going to use the word powerful. Or maybe a better description is I had a very good sense of my center of gravity as a young child. And I knew that I was an outlier, for lack of a better word. I mean, hello, I just told you I'm like this 2% of the population. I'm like, wow, how can I leverage this to give my talents to the world? But I think it's funny looking back on that. I totally leaned into those kind of outlier proficiencies that I had. But if you look at my middle, teen years to early adult years, it's funny how society started putting me in a box. But even my parents, they start putting you in a box. And I felt sequestered and sheltered. And eventually, through my journey of entrepreneurism, I think I just realized, wow, I'm ready to fold out of this box again and be my outlier self and lean into that and just fully embrace it. So I think that's been an interesting revelation for me as well.
I had a guest on the podcast, probably back in 2020 or early 2021, Dr. Katie Larson, and she's an expert in high sensitivity. And we had that exact same discussion. She said so many highly sensitive children have that peaked awareness and a very strong sense of self and intuition and groundedness and all of those things. And then teen college years, she said she lost that in herself because if you'd have asked her, she'd have said, yeah, I love going out to parties. Yeah, I love doing that. And actually she didn't, but she didn't realize it. She got so overstimulated by it. But it's the conditioning of this is what you should be doing at this age. And then it wasn't until she was kind of out of the other end and a parent herself that she leaned back into her sensitivity and then went on to study it very deeply and help others with it.
That's amazing. Yeah. And I think like, that's okay, right? I mean, our world is designed in a certain way. There are going to be conformities, social norms, cultural norms. But I think having the awareness and power to realize how you've maybe walked away from your true self and how to walk back to your true self to get back to that core is where I think, even as a human society, I think that's where we're all at right now, having a deeper understanding of being okay to not necessarily fit into this homogenous society with all these distractions. And you have to have a powerful sense of self and a center of gravity to be able to say no and to be able to walk the direction that no one else is walking. But that's the stuff that I love. I mean, I've always loved that. And I realize for others, it's not always so easy, but it's extremely empowering, and it allows you just to take full control of your life. And until you do it, you don't know it, but it's amazing once you do it.
It's like, I found myself again. I'm using that phrase. Like, one of my clients described it as like coming home to themselves. They felt like they'd gone out and gotten lost in, following bad directions. And then when they came back, it all made sense. They said that reading about introversion and sensitivity and understanding that in that moment was like a thunderbolt. And it was like, oh, of course, duh.
And I really think it takes a level of disconnectedness. It takes a level of discomfort us to realize that. And when we honor the moments that we feel misaligned, we feel lost, we feel like there may be something more for us, we're not quite sure what it is. We may feel just like we don't really know who we are. I think when that discomfort finally outweighs the fear of trying something new, then you're really ready to take action. I mean, I think that's really what has to happen. That discomfort finally outweighs the fear of trying something new, and you're okay with rediscovering yourself. And I don't know what that inflection point is for introverts or for individuals at an expansive level. But I think for each of us, there's something in us that is that inflection point that gives yourself permission to explore that further, which is really beautiful.
So Melissa in the early 2000s was organized and good at systems and automation. And, that was your strengths, quote unquote. Yeah. Then when you really started to lean into yourself and take your solitude trips, what did you discover were your strengths at this stage in life?
Yeah, I think having the moment to reflect on my solitude retreats, I realized that I spent those core entrepreneurial years kind of serving in a masculine capacity because I was totally diving into my talents, my efficiency and automation expertise. And I was also many times pretending and proving to fit into an industry and sector that I didn't necessarily fit into. This was the early 2000s. Women in technology did exist, but not at a abundant scale. And I didn't have, that is back when women often did not support other women, especially in the tech industry. They wanted to hold their space for themselves. So I was very lucky to have a lot of male allies take me on my journey of tech entrepreneurship. And I don't take that for granted. But there were so many years of pretending and proving and feeding into this masculine energy that this notion of burnout really came to the forefront. And that is when the solitude retreats were so beneficial for me to, one, realize that. Because I, back then, was a human doing, not a human being. So I wasn't even aware that I was pretending and proving. It just felt like I was doing what I needed to do to be successful and lead my team and go forth in the industry. And so, one, having that awareness was really important. But two, the deep self-reflection, which is so hard to do, and excavating old beliefs that didn't serve me anymore. But two, it was really last year, 2023, about a year ago, actually, it was late February, early March, this time last year, that I felt depressed. I don't think I was clinically depressed. I wasn't seeing a therapist or taking medication, but I just felt heavy and depressed. And I realized it was because I was mourning my old identity and giving myself permission to mourn that. It was so uncomfortable. It lasted like 45, 60 days. And having that permission and that time to just mourn that old identity and then shed that emotion so I can lean into my new identity was really where I am now. And so like last year, I said my word last year was alignment. And I think this year for 2024, now that I've mourned those old identities, my word for this year is alacrity. And alacrity just means blissful action. Like I've done the work. I know who I am. I know where I'm going. I know what I want to be doing and who I want to be working with. So let me lead that with this blissful action in 2024 and execution. And it has not been an easy journey, but it is so powerful and such a blessing just to kind of be at this point.
Oh, thank you for sharing. I love that. I love the kind of non-linearness of the journey, which I think it's so easy to look at people from the outside and think that their success just kind of grew and grew. And it's so important to see, oh, well, this happened and then this happened. And then I was back up here and then there was this darker period and now I'm back on track again.
Exactly. Yeah. Non-linear is the path of all things, right? As being a human and owning a business or being an executive. But I think it's a beautiful journey. And there have been times when I've experienced emotions of resentment, like just in the decisions I made to lean into that life in those earlier years. But then I really have to take a pause and honor that, because everything that I have experienced and done in my previous versions of myself have led me to this moment. And so I think it's important too, as people are going through this process, if they decide to go through this process, is to be gentle with yourself, right? And really honor those emotions, but be able to process the emotions and not hold them in your body, because that can be very, very toxic.
So 2 very masculine businesses in 10. Tell us about business number 3.
Business number 3, very feminine energy here, but I've launched a company called Catalytic Icon, and it's been an amazing journey over the last 1.5 to 2 years. I basically focus on building communities of female entrepreneurs, and we go on a journey together. We go on a journey, and as I mentioned, I have these very unique personality traits and these very unique kind of talents now where I can really help individuals uncover their true worth and desires. And I help them curate their dreamiest lifestyles. And I focus on entrepreneurs because that's the journey that I've been on. And I like to focus on female entrepreneurs because as females, we're often extremely self-reliant and do everything on our own in silos. But we also seem like powerful forces that like to do everything and take care of everyone. And I want to help serve as an example of how you can serve yourself first before you serve others. So yeah, in this community, we go through a process where we uncover your talents, passions, and desires and reconnect with that and use that as a foundation to build a dreamy lifestyle that's beyond your wildest dreams, which I think is important.
I love the curated dreamy lifestyle. I remember when you said that before and I was like, oh, I love it. I love it. I'm going to drop all of your links in the show notes. So anyone that wants to connect with you in any capacity or learn more about that will be able to do so. Before we wrap up, I usually ask guests the same question at the end, which is to share one way that they own their energy so that they can reach their potential. I feel like you've shared so many of the things you do because you've shared your solitude retreats and your morning and evening routine. But if you had to pick one very simple thing that someone could take away and start implementing straight away, what would one practice be?
I think the one thing that is very simple to do because you can catch yourself doing it, but has a profound impact on your level of energy and the thoughts that enter your brain is to really just be extremely mindful of when you're interacting or consuming media. whether, in whatever capacity that is. But, I would recommend lowering your consumption and decreasing that from what you're doing today. Or two, when you are consuming media, if you have any tinge in your body that becomes a tinge of, oh, I'm comparing myself to this person, or FOMO, or, desiring something else, or anything that creates almost a negative response, you can feel it in your body. So just becoming aware of that and feeling that and catching it, and then deciding how you want to process that. Do you want to keep consuming that media, or how are you going to process that emotion when you come across it in the future? I think that is just a very tactical thing. We're all bombarded with messages every day, every minute of the day. So just taking a moment to become aware of it, honor it, and decide how you're going to process it is a big, powerful step.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that one. I could not agree more. Melissa, it's been a joy. Thank you so much for chatting to me for the second time in a month.
Oh, I loved it. Thank you so much for having me on. This is so great.
You are so welcome. See you soon. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode. I hope that you're feeling expanded to what's possible for you, motivated to take action, and inspired about how you can start to own your energy. I share even more tools and resources on my Introverts Only email newsletter. By signing up, you not only get early access to the Ambitious Introvert products and services, but you also get brand new podcast episodes delivered straight to your inbox every Monday, meaning you'll never miss your weekly dose of introvert-friendly inspiration. Sign up now at theambitiousintrovert.com/newsletter or click the link in the show notes. See you next week.